to elite level spins, cuts, and turns, and learning how to move around more confidently after a brain injury have in common? More than you'd think, and it all comes down to how we train the brain for balance. I'm Kiley Como, legal nurse consultant at Shane Smith Law, and this is Mind Matters, Navigating Head Injuries and Concussions, a podcast where we connect the dots between brain science, real-life recovery, and the legal world of traumatic brain injury. In this episode, we're back with our friend Shelia Thelen. She's an expert with vestibular training, and she's going to talk about the connection between performance and rehabilitation, who can benefit from vestibular training, whether you're an athlete or a TBI survivor or anywhere in between, and how this kind of work might also help tell a clearer story of personal injury cases. Shelia, it's good to have you back.
Thanks for having me. I'm always so honored to do these projects. Thank you.
Absolutely. We had a lot of fun on the last episode. Audience, if you didn't see episode 1 with Shelia, I really encourage you to go back and listen. It was chock full of great information. It was just a fun conversation. So Shelia, let's dig right in. Shelia, in your mind, doing what you do, what is the connection between high-level performance training, that elite level training, and then rehabilitation after an injury, especially people with concussions or TBIs?
So this is maybe controversial, yet at the same time, we think this is so basic. We look at them as the same thing in our company. We look at performance and rehabilitation as the same thing. We don't separate it. We don't send you to two different divisions. It's the same exact thing. To the point we even train it the same. So the way I work with elite world champions, pro football players, NFL, NBA, NHL, like all of these professional athletes, is the same way I treat the aging population and concussion people and kids with autism and everyone with a brain. We treat the same on our gear. Now your skill level just kind of keeps improving, and maybe it starts with one turn, but you just keep growing in skills in retraining this vestibular system. So really, performance and rehabilitation, same thing.
That makes sense the way you describe that. So, in your first episode, you kind of led on with what you did. You're, a professional trainer when it comes to like figure skating, things like that, the spinning, the movement portion of things, those tools that you have to create those amazing spins, those jumps, that just incredible balance that we see athletes, portray. How does that translate into helping people recover from concussions and brain-related issues?
So your vestibular system that we talk about is just like right inside both ears, that left ear and right ear. It goes from like eardrum to vestibular system out to the cochlea. It's your entire balance system. So even bending over and tying your shoes and pulling your head back up, that's all tied to your vestibular system. And I get the question all the time, well, no, balance comes from my feet. I'm like, no, balance comes from your inner ear. That's what's totally driving everything, is that inner ear. And it's so important that vestibular system works correctly. But vestibular is tied to so many things, 30 major functions. But the 4 big ones, of course, balance affects everyone. Cognitive affects everyone. Spatial affects everyone. And sleep affects everyone. And how those 4 key factors control your entire life in good or bad. If one of those systems if the vestibular isn't working correctly, it's awful. Like it's such a struggle, and it's so hard for the person, yet their family at the same time.
Train wreck. I mean, most of our clients that come to us here at Shane Smith Law, the vast majority have some level of TBI, but some are worse than others, obviously. And that when it's significant, that is, there could be some major neck, back, fractured, limbs. The TBI, when you're talking to the clients, is by far their biggest focus, because that is, you're right, it impacts every single component. It affects the way you recover from those other injuries. And so you've got to get that brain right, that vestibular system working right. So again, really am psyched to have you on the show to talk about these sorts of things. We keep talking about performance and rehabilitation and how you approach those pretty similarly. There are some things that are, I'm sure, exactly the same. Are there any differences, especially when you've got somebody who may have other injuries, in the way you approach their treatment, therapeutically speaking?
Well, it all ties together. But the other thing too is I'm going to add in the concept of anxiety. Okay, especially even in my PTSD group, is that if you're not sleeping correctly and if your balance is off and that vestibular isn't working, it's screaming. Okay, that whole fight or flight is screaming in your head that it's not safe. It's not safe. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. Like, it's terrifying. And so that screaming that it's coming from your vestibular. So if we can calm that, if we can get that balance back, if we can get that sleep working correctly, all those little tiny pieces calm that nervous system, boy, let's talk about overall life and health and, drops in the anxiety and just feeling better and safe in your environment. It all ties together of mental health.
You mentioned on the last episode one of your success stories, Thor, you called him, and how he came to you with a significant concussion and had subsequent concussions afterwards because, again, you have these balance issues which cause you, put you at higher risk to fall. That puts you at higher risk to hit your head again, which puts you at higher risk to have another concussion, because once you've had one, it's easier to have more. It's just this vicious circle, right? That keeps going and going. So addressing these issues is so critical to get in early, I would imagine, right? You don't want to wait on something like this.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, I also seem to see a whole batch of people that they got better initially, but they've hit the 6-month mark and they're just not getting better. And one of my other really famous success stories comes from an athlete that I used to work with, who's now 20 years old and not in the sport anymore, but came back to me when she just wasn't getting better with the normal PT system. But she came to me even, and ironically, because I knew her as a child, she used to squirrel talk. Like, she could talk really, really fast. So like one of those really, really fast talker kids, so she was a really fast squirrel talker. And when she came in to work with me after this concussion that was over 6 months old, she talked slow. And I was like, oh no, what's wrong? It was hard to see those changes. And her family just kept talking about how she just wasn't the same after the concussion. So of course, my success story is, within a 4-month window of working with me once a week, she really gets better, and she squirrel talks again, and she's feeling better, and she's driving, and all these pieces really came back, and going back and hitting a piece that really had been overlooked of the vestibular system with, an average PT who really did their best. I'm going to say they're doing their best, but this is new and this is different, and this is bringing sports training to the general public. And that's something that a lot of PTs don't have experience with. So really, it's really exciting to see the education window of this, yet at the same time, these really improved outcomes.
Absolutely. So critical to educating, getting the word out about these newer technologies and services, if you will. And you talk about this particular young lady getting back to where she was. I'm sure, and you mentioned earlier in the previous episode about medicating certain symptoms. You talk about anxiety and PTSD. So often you see these patients, these clients get put on medications for depression, for anxiety. The things you're doing, though, as you're getting them back to where they were, gets them off of those, or maybe even avoids having to go on those particular medications in the first place. So again, such a boon to people suffering from these injuries to have services like these.
Of course, we're not against medication. For sure, there's a world that needs medication.
Absolutely.
I'm all for it for certain people, but the fact that our company is non-invasive is just really a proud point within our company. And can we do something that's very basic and simple on something that's not simple and basic of the concussion and the brain injury?
Good way to put it. Yes, you're right. Medication does have its place, but there are other opportunities potentially to do some other things. So I appreciate that call out. You work with a lot of different patient populations. You've mentioned, older folks, elderly, children, kids, athletes, etc. Training doesn't look the same. I know you approach, the performance training and the rehab the same, but I'm sure the different patient populations may get a little different approach.
You're gonna laugh. It's almost the same. It's
amazing.
Exact protocol. Although I always talk about our company is really great at finding other geniuses within their industry, and so that one unit can help 1,000 people with different specialists. So one of our specialists in Tampa, the Biooptimization Institute, their specialty is oxygen. So they really specialize with adding pre and post oxygen to vestibular training. One of our really great military specialists in Colorado Springs, Kadrick Bloomquist. Oh my gosh, he's really applying kind of almost like a Zen for like PTSD and concussions, and his dad has Parkinson's, so he's been working with the whole big Parkinson's group in Colorado Springs. Fabulous to see how that applies in almost an identical way of Zen and flow. Tanya Yardley, who we love up in Vancouver, so much in the Indigenous population and First Nations and underserved communities. Same thing, she's doing tons of work in concussions and brain health, but she's also doing a big project in the aging population. So it's really fun to see all these different specialists apply our gear with our protocols, but then they kind of give it a little tweak of their own from their specialty. And wow, it's to see these outcomes are just, I tear up. It's very exciting.
Very inspiring. I love the interdisciplinary approach almost. You hear that so much on inpatient hospital type care, but it goes on outside too. So can you walk us through a sample session for somebody who comes to you for this type of treatment?
We love pre and post testing. So our favorite product is Balance Tracking Systems. They're based out of California, but they have multiple tests that we can do on a balance plate. So it just gives us data. But we do what our favorite test is. It's a fall prevention risk assessment for my aging population, which just kind of gives you a barometer of, are you a fall risk? But their other second test that we use all the time is what they call a modified CAT-SIP. And I want to go back and say these are really easy to understand when it prints out the data. Like, it's not like overwhelming data that people can't understand. Super easy to understand for the general public. It's got lots of green lights and red lights of where you're struggling. But that test is great because it's eyes open, eyes closed. Then we add the foam. Okay, that foam is hard. Eyes open, eyes closed. But then another company that just came to us that's doing our cognitive testing is a company called Axon Brain. It's a quick, easy test, like a simple 1, 2, 3, 4, find the numbers, move around. There's rules within it. And you get a score. And then they have a harder test too. So one is easy and one's harder. But then we gently spin. And I have to talk about some people, I'll be honest, I look funny in some of our videos because sometimes people start with literally one spin. That's all they can handle. And that's enough. That's where we start, is one spin. Eventually, people get up to 2 spins and 3 spins. And once again, very slowly. And then we can go longer. We can go slow. We eventually move to 3 sets. So they'll go counterclockwise, clockwise, and then counterclockwise. And our kids jump onto it pretty fast. We have 2 systems. One is like a fly system where I can fly you and spin you in midair, or the rail system where you can hold on and you're not going anywhere. So it's fun to see the 2 different ones. But that fly system is fabulous for my athletes, for military, chaos training, special forces, first responders, people that have chaos jobs. And boy, it cooks them. Okay, I'll be honest, it's so much. But they work up to that skill, just like anything. It's like bench press. You don't start at 400 pounds. You work your way up in a training room the same way you work your way up in a neuro lab. I'll be honest, same exact concept. So then afterwards, we let you settle for about 5 minutes, retest everything, and the data changes are shocking. Even to us, we're impressed with our data. We're impressed. We just had a big white paper come out showing a 22% improvement post-concussion in 1 session. But we're addressing that vestibular system, like I said, that's been overlooked by a majority of healthcare professionals. So it's missed in the rehab and the performance side. And that's where we're having so much success. But we see the data changes in the balance. We see the data changes in the cognitive by significant amounts. My favorite, we just did a test yesterday. She's 79 and a half years old, and she sped up by 93 seconds in her pre and post brain test. I was like, wow, boy, 93 seconds faster. But for driving. For just driving alone. She's still driving, and she's really become a better driver, and the lack of falls where she previously had falls. So all these little pieces all tie together in the client's success, yet once again the family's success around that.
Yeah, because it doesn't impact just the the person who has the injury, of course, they're the main impact, but the family, the support system, people who love and care for those folks, they are right along there with the journey. So I'm glad you included them. We're definitely big advocates for our clients' families and loved ones. So you've talked a lot about. I'm glad you talked about the changes we see. Is there there's not a particular track that you see your clients follow. Again, it's I'm sure very individualized. You did mention the white paper that showed that said 22% improvement after just one session. That's incredible.
It was shocking.
That's
even
incredible.
even the balance play company called us and they're like, "How'd you do that? Tell us everything." And that's the exciting part too. And that's even some of our research projects coming up with the military. We've been working with the Geneva Foundation down at Fort Bragg, and upcoming projects with them and more research and other groups that are teaming up with us. We're doing a project at the University of Minnesota, and all of these teams are coming together with more and more data, but there's already 50,000 papers already published on vestibular. So if you go to pubmed.gov and you can tweak the search to be like vestibular plus aging, vestibular plus concussion, vestibular plus autism, vestibular plus depression. Like you can search it to really what you're interested in and really understand how that vestibular system ties into everyday life and in everyday success.
I would love to pose a question to our audience then. Again, we have a lot of survivors, family members, clinicians, legal industry experts on that watch and listen to the show. If you've had any experience with vestibular therapy, vestibular training, have you seen it help your own recovery or the recovery of your loved one or client? I would love for you guys to share that experience below in our comments. Again, we're really looking to help others who are looking for answers. So if you could do that, it would be very, very helpful. Shelia, from a legal kind of in documentation standpoint, what sorts of objective changes, right, those measurable changes of observations can come out of your work that might help an attorney or say somebody working on a legal case to demonstrate the impact of a TBI on day-to-day function?
I feel like easy documentation of before the accident and after the accident. And people have so many painful, that they're fuzzy, they're confused, they're not able to read, they can't write well. One of my favorite clients talks about he could write like 2 or 3 words and then they just kind of fell off the paper. He's a former engineer, it seemed really painfully obvious.
Yeah.
Their sleep, their ability to drive, all of those things I think are super almost easy to document, and their family can really come in and support what they used to be like and where they're at now. And it's a significant decline, and it's fast. It's instant. Like that accident for sure was the issue.
Documentation, obviously, in on the legal side of things, is such a critical component, and so we always appreciate our providers who are meticulous with the collection of their information, their medical records. Really makes or breaks a case, and so it sounds like you guys are all over that. Would love to ask the professionals in the audience, where do you see the biggest opportunity to bring performance-focused balance training, like Sheila's team is doing, into TBI rehab or into the way we document the impact of a TBI with regard to a legal case? Again, please leave those thoughts below in the comments section. Shelia, I know we're kind of running up against time there, unfortunately, so I would again like to ask how people can connect with you. What's the best way for survivors or families or professionals like us to reach out to you and learn whether vestibular training is a good fit for them?
So our easiest thing is the good old website, spinyourbrain.com. I recently did a project with the Mac Parkman Foundation. And what their focus is on is TBI in young athletes. And that's even the work with Sports Philanthropy here based in the States, a company called Sports Philanthropy, looking at younger children with concussions and the dangers of this in contact sports, young football, even soccer, heading the ball, like all of these little micro bleeds, that really looking at sports and brain health for children is a big passion within our company, and the mental health that is tied with that. We look at athletes, we look at pro football, all of this new research coming out on CTE and athletes, and it's something to really, really be looking at in our sports world, but in our overall life world of everyone's life. So brain health for children, I think, is a huge thing that we as a society need to be looking at.
Absolutely. Brain health, education. You know, we've had on a guest not too long ago who was in the world of MMA fighting, and that was something they were big passionate about too, just educating about, you know, the right and wrong ways of going about contact sports and just you know, moving through the world in general, right? So I really appreciate champions like yourself looking out for the kids, the future, right? That's what it's all about. So thank you, Shelia. That's going to wrap up another episode of Mind Matters, navigating head injuries and concussions. A huge thank you to Shelia Thelen for showing us how the world of performance and rehab overlap, how vestibular training can support not just better spins and jumps, but just better walking and driving, working, and just living life after a brain injury. If today's discussion gave you ideas about your own recovery or maybe how to better support somebody you love, we'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Your questions and your stories help us to bridge that gap between medicine and therapy and the legal side of TBI. Please subscribe, give this episode a like, and share it with somebody who might benefit from a different way of thinking about balance and the brain. And as always, remember, if you're in pain, call Shane at 980-999-9999. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Mind Matters.
In pain, so I call Shane. 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.